Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Naruto met the Moon Kingdom's samurai princess and everything changed? Part 3. The next day Becky was coming home from a training session with Ebisu, sore and sweaty, when she noticed someone lurking around Hinata's house. He was about their age with dark hair to his chin and in a top knot. He was dressed in a modern rendition of traditional garb. He was peeking around the corners and trying to see in the windows. "Can I help you?" Becky asked defensively. It wasn't like the Hyuga to let someone loiter like this. The boy turned with a start, glaring at her at first, but then his face shifted back to neutral. "I'm looking for Hyuga Hinata." He tried a soft smile with her. He reminded Becky of a badger. "And you are?" Becky circled around him, trying to put herself between the stranger and the house. "Kenji Hideki." He sensed Becky's trepidation and fished in his happy coat. He pulled out an envelope and held it out to her. "I don't mean to disturb you, I just wanted to give her this, Miss Tsukimori Becky." Becky gave him a curt bow. "I'll give it to her myself." The boy eyed her over suspiciously, as if she was the trespasser on Hyuga land. He leaned towards her as he spoke. Becky was sure he meant it as a way to be intimate, but it came off forceful and creepy. "If you don't mind me asking, Miss Tsukimori, what business do you have in the Hyuga compound?" "I should ask you the same thing." Becky eyed him evasively. "I think I'll wait for Hinata to return." Hideki pocketed the letter in his happy coat. "Look, buddy, I'm her roommate." Becky jangled the keys. "You can't hover around here all day. I'll throw it on her desk for you." Hideki paused for a moment, sizing her up. After some consideration, he held out the letter. "It concerns a very urgent personal matter. See she gets it post haste." "Can do, General." Becky gave him a mock salute. He frowned at her and trudged away muttering something about inbred cows. Becky brought the letter inside and set it on the table. Something wasn't right about that kid. Forgetting about her disheveled appearance, she jogged around the compound until she found Neji. "Hey, Neji." "Yes." He looked up from his book and immediately frowned at her appearance. "You look like you just left a prize fight." "Who is Kenji Hideki?" Becky asked. Neji threw his book aside and was on his feet faster than Becky could blink. "Was he here? Did he do this to you?" Neji asked frantically, grabbing her shoulders. "No." She shook her head. "He was hanging around Hinata's house and asked me to give her a letter." "Did you?" He shook her slightly. "No. She's not home, she's out with the boys. It's on our table." Becky pointed toward the house, and Neji immediately started running. "Wait, Neji, tell me what's going on." Becky stumbled after him. "Who is this kid?" "To put it plainly, he is very dangerous and a direct threat to Lady Hinata," Neji said as he barged into their kitchen. "How did he get in?" "We'll need to tighten security around the compound and lock this house down until we figure it out." Neji fished around the kitchen and took out a pair of disposable chopsticks and used them to open the letter. "You know it's a crime to read other people's mail." Becky leaned over his shoulder to read. "What's it say?" "He's apologizing." Neji shook his head and grimaced. "The nerve. As if one could apologize after what he did, and asking to see her in person, this is ridiculous." "What did he do?" Becky yelled, forgetting she was next to his ear. Neji retracted painfully, shooting her a look that could pierce steel, and then sighing. "The Kenji clan is a powerful group of landholders with access to lots of valuable natural resources. His father wanted Hideki to marry Hinata, which was something he himself desired. They didn't like her arrangement with Naruto, so Hideki and his father kidnapped her. She was beaten, put under mental and emotional stress. Naruto went after her." Neji's voice trailed off as he remembered the ordeal. He shook his head and continued. "If you see him again, Becky, keep your distance. His family has a very powerful and painful genjutsu. Hinata and Naruto got lucky. I've seen people that have had that technique used on them. It mangles them from the inside. Neji tapped his skull to demonstrate. Becky grimaced. How does a genjutsu mangle people? It sends signals through the pain network of the nervous system. He closed up the letter and carefully put it back in its envelope, never letting it touch his skin. So what do we do? Becky put her hands on her S, ready for action. You will do nothing. You will not tell Hinata. He tapped her on the nose. You will pretend this never happened. But, she started to speak but he cut her off. It was a very traumatizing experience for Hinata. The Asuka and Hideki supposedly fled the village after the incident. Their clan remains however, and are likely to provide them with aid, Neji explained. If they're coming back, it isn't good news. Until we know exactly what they are up to, we need to keep this under wraps. It would only distress Lady Hinata. Shouldn't we warn her he's lurking around though? Becky asked. You know, let her know to be on the lookout. Neji thought about it and sighed. If we have her supervised around the clock it shouldn't be a problem. So you just want me to withhold something like this from her? Becky stared him down. Hinata was her best friend, and she was 99% sure if someone was stalking her, Hinata would let her know. That's how homies do. Just for the time being, Neji patted Becky on the shoulder and headed for the door. Just until we know what's going on. Hey, hold a sec, Becky grabbed him by the sleeve. You and I need to debrief. Oh, about the, Neji looked away and flushed. The woods. What happened in the woods? Yeah, Becky stared him down. So Hinata told me about the whole equals wedding thing. Neji looked up at the ceiling and heaved a deep sigh. I never thought this would happen to me, but, it's only proper. You've told Hinata, but I'm assuming we haven't told Hiyashi yet. He's going to have an aneurysm if he finds out another member of the family violated the old laws. No, Neji, I didn't tell her shit. Becky put her hands on her S. She only told me that's how she and Naruto got engaged. I was just letting you know to keep your trap shut and no one will ever find out. He considered her as if for the first time. So we don't have to get married. No, Neji, we don't have to get married. Becky crossed her arms. She wasn't sure how to feel about the grin that broke out on his face from ear to ear at the news. What the hell is that smile for? Becky scowled. Didn't like what you saw. Neji turned as red as a beet and averted his eyes. He immediately began stammering. And no, that's not it at all. It's just we're so young and we hardly know each other. Okay, because if you were trying to tell me these, she squeezed her S. Weren't top notch, then your standing as a straight man in Konoha is going to come into question. Neji couldn't bring himself to face her. Becky noticed he had stopped breathing when she grabbed her chest. Poor baby, Becky thought. He's not used to women being so direct. No, those are, fine. Perfectly fine. It was all perfectly fine. Becky's eyes grew wide. She couldn't let this go. Oh my god, have you never seen a woman before? You have to be kidding me. You have X-ray vision and you've never accidentally caught a peek. Becky, can I go? Neji was craning his head so far to the side she was afraid it would snap off his neck. You're just doing this to humiliate me. You win. You were the first woman I have ever seen. Becky sat there in silence for a moment, then began to slowly shake her head. My god, I'm beginning to understand why you people have these laws. Go. Before your head explodes. Neji could not get out there fast enough. Becky smiled to herself. Neji put up a good big boy front but God help him when it came to girls. The next day, Becky was out running errands after training when she ran into Ino. Hey bitchy, Ino smiled. I've noticed you've been avoiding me. It's surprisingly easy to do, Becky said, not missing a beat. Your arrival is preceded by a fishy smell. Ino ignored that comment and squared off with her, forcing Becky to face her. About the whole bet you lost. Becky sighed. She had to go and run her big fat mouth. At the time, Her plan had seemed flawless, and how was she supposed to know Ino had some broken jutsu that let her hijack bodies? In that instant, she weighed her options. She could crack Ino over the skull with her kunai bag and put her in the hospital for a week, buying her time. That would be messy and probably involve her father being called. She could face this problem, run down the street in her underwear and be done with it, but if every clan was like the Hyugas, she'd have to marry half the men in Konoha. She sighed. There was one thing she could do. Fine, she sighed. When and where? Ino blinked in surprise and gave Becky the biggest smile she had ever seen. Oh, my God. Becky, I thought you were going to chicken out. You know what? I'm going to let you pick because you're following through. Becky rolled her eyes and thought hard. Okay. Thursday night around 11 p.m. You and Sakura stand on one end. I give you guys my coat. I run to the other end where Hinata and Tenten will be waiting with another coat. Ino leapt with joy. I'll let the girls know. Being a winner is so much fun. She patted Becky's cheek. You should lose more often, honey. Your pout is adorable. One day I'm gonna rip those bangs right out of your head. Becky glared her down. So your hair matches your botched job. Whatevs, bitchy. See you Thursday. It was unusually chilly for a summer night in Konoha. Becky swore under her breath. Of course it was pushing 10 degrees Celsius the night she was supposed to run in her skivvies. A slight wind had picked up, meaning on top of the low temperature, she was going to have a nice crisp wind chill to harden her nips. You don't have to do this, Sakura whispered into her ear. Yes she does, Ino scoffed. She lost a bet. It's stupid. Sakura shook her head. She's going to catch cold. Botox is right, Becky sighed. I gave my word. Better to do it now than in broad daylight. Sakura sighed and took a hold of one side of the coat. Ino grabbed a hold of the other. She was so excited, Becky felt her hands shaking. Was she that much of a bitch that beating her made Ino this happy? Whatever, Becky thought. It's my bed. I gotta lay in it. She stepped out of the coat into the brisk night air. The Council of Girls had decided that in addition to her underthings, Becky would be allowed her shoes. It was all fun and games until someone slipped on a riverbank and ended up paralyzed for life, after all. A strange thought process had taken Becky over earlier as she prepared for this night. It was as if she was a monarch facing the chopping block. Everyone had gathered to see her fall from grace, but by God she was gonna look good going down. Becky wore her prettiest matching set. The push-up bra and panties were made of powder blue cotton soft as a baby's butt covered with shimmery silver lace. It made her feel like an ice queen, and that's what she needed to be if she was going to survive the emotional trauma this night would bring. Becky, where did you get that set? Sakura forgot to whisper. They don't sell anything like that in Konoha. Can I tell you later? It's freezing. Becky shook as a breeze tore through her skimpy coverings. Yeah, sorry, Sakura flushed. Get going before you get pneumonia. Go girl. Ino slapped her rump as she took off at a full gallop down the street. It was the longest 100 yards Becky would run in her life. It was as if time itself slowed so it could relish in her humiliation and misery. Every step she took made Hinata and Tenten seem further away. Without the safety and constriction of her clothes, Becky felt every inch of herself bounce and jiggle as she ran. Her face was growing red, as much from embarrassment as cold. After what seemed like an eternity, Becky reached Tenten and Hinata. They wrapped her in the bathrobe they had brought and Becky swore it was better than the warmest hug in the world. Becky, I don't know what to say, Tenten shook her head. That was probably the stupidest thing I've ever seen someone do, but at the same time, I'm impressed. That took some serious guts. A Tsukimori doesn't back down from their word. Becky felt much more confident in public in a bathrobe. It was funny how perspective could do that for you. After her nearly romp, that robe might have been a suit of armor. Let's get you home and put you in a bath. Hinata was embarrassed for Becky. If someone held Hinata at knife point and told her the only way to save herself was to do what Becky just did, Hinata would die. No doubt about it. Becky had put on the puffiest pajama pants she owned and a pullover. Hinata had made her a cup of tea, but Becky had a bad feeling she was going to catch a cold from her little escapade. Feeling any better, Hinata plopped down on the sofa beside her. The tea is helping. Becky sipped at it. My pride is going to need a while longer to mend. Hinata gently slapped Becky's foot. It's your own fault. You should never have made that bet and you should have never followed through on it. I know, Hina-chan, Becky sighed. If you ever hear me start to say something like that again, you have full permission to stuff socks in my mouth. Hinata sighed. So did I win my way into the girl circle, officially? Becky eyed Hinata warily. Or will it take more hazing? Hinata shook her head. I think you definitely won them over, either with your courage or your stubbornness. Becky leaned back in the chair. Well, that's a relief. I was beginning to worry I would have to start taking Neji shopping with me. Neji really isn't that bad. Hinata looked at her feet. By the way, have any of the boys caught your interest? Becky laughed. You're kidding me, right? Let's see. Kiba and me are a no-no. I don't even know what Shino looks like other than his nose. Neji might as well be a brother at this point. And then you have Lee. What about Shikamaru and Choji? Hinata could hope someone had caught Becky's eye. Hinata really wanted to be able to talk to someone about relations. She could help Becky through the starting out stuff, and Becky could help her with the "my boyfriend is on the other side of the world and I only hear from him once every 3 weeks" stuff. Shikamaru thinks I'm about as smart as wet paint and my father made me promise to never get with a man that eats more than me. Becky gestured to the kitchen. I don't know if you've noticed, but I eat as much as a man already. I wouldn't say that. Hinata was being gracious. Becky totally ate as much as a man. She had eaten kiba under the table the other day at the barbecue shop. Lee took it as a contest and ended up with a 1,000 ryo bill. Maybe some dashing fire lord will breeze through Konoha and sweep me off my feet in a whirlwind romance, Becky teased. That way we can have an equally forbidden relations as you and Naruto. Don't tease me, Hinata pouted. I just want you happy, is all. I know, and you're sweet. Becky rolled off the couch and put her cup in the sink. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm late for a party with MC Pillow and DJ Blanky. Hinata waved at her as she headed up the stairs. Becky was great company, but she wasn't Naruto. In the quiet moments, like now, when the world was cold and dark, she couldn't help but feel the chill. Naruto was her sunshine in the dead of winter, as comforting and reassuring as a towel right out of the dryer after a shower. His letters made her equal parts happy and sad, because she could read them and hear his voice in her head, but she was also reminded he was a world away growing up without her. She cried for the first time in weeks that night, quietly, so as not to wake up her friend. At last she gave up the fight, headed up the stairs, and put herself to bed. Tomorrow would be a better day, she told herself. The next week was uneventful, until Becky found another letter from Hideki tucked in the doorframe of Hinata's house. Following Neji's lead, she used her sleeve to grab it and hunted him down. Neji. She ran towards him waving the note in the air. Here's another one. Neji was in the zone. He had been meditating for an hour to hone his focus. The courtyard was abandoned, and the day was beautiful. Neji was absolutely calm. He lowered himself into position. 8 trigram 64 palm. Becky had just come within striking distance, taking a blow directly to the face. The bitch slap knocked her 3 feet into the air and back onto her bottom. AHAHOW. Becky rolled onto her side holding her cheek. A string of curses flew from her mouth that made Neji blush. Becky, are you alright? She glared at him, her cheek already swelling. Are you deaf? I called out to you and everything. Neji blinked down at her. He had sworn he was alone in the courtyard. His hearing was usually excellent, Maybe she had called out to him from too far away. I'm sorry about that. He held out a hand and pulled her to her feet. I swear I didn't hear you coming. She sighed. It's okay. It must be something I'm doing. Hinata clocked me 3 days ago during training. Neji couldn't imagine Lady Hinata accidentally hitting someone and being able to live with herself afterwards. So what did you need my help with? Neji brushed the dirt off her shoulder. Thanks. Becky held out the letter, still locked in her sleeve-covered lobster grasp. I think you know who left another letter. Neji scowled and gingerly took it with his sleeve. He reached into his kunai bag and took out a senbon. He broke the seal and used the point to open the letter. Why are we using our sleeves, by the way? Becky asked. Is he a poisoner? Not just a poisoner, a sadist, Neji sighed. It's like a game for him. Oh, Becky eyed her sleeve suspiciously, then carefully rolled it so none of it would accidentally come into contact with her. So what does it say this time? More of the same, only with more urgency and less courtesy. Neji slapped the letter shut. I can't believe he found another way in. What really concerns me is that he's already escalating. Before, he waited outside, now he's forced it into the house. The next letter you might find may well be in Lady Hinata's bedroom. Becky stepped in closer and looked up at Neji, searching his face as she spoke. Does this mean we can tell Hinata now? Neji held her gaze for a moment before he looked off towards the main house and sighed. I need to consult Hiyashi on how to proceed, given this recent development. I'll let you know what he decides. I would talk to him soon. Becky crossed her arms. Hinata's on her way home now, and if you don't say something, I will. Neji grabbed Becky's shoulder. Becky, please. It's hard for you to understand because you weren't here when everything went down the first time. As a personal favor, do not say anything to her. Not yet. Becky stared him down. Neji didn't back down from her gaze this time, so she relented. Fine, but you had better keep me posted. Fair enough. Neji let her go. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Neji walked towards the main house and Becky watched him go. It was strange for her to be caught up in another family's intimate affair like this. Part of her felt like she needed to put some distance between herself and the issue, but at the same time, because it affected Hinata, she wanted to be even more involved. Becky walked back to Hinata's house, rubbing her puffy cheek. She would have to ice it before Hinata got home or she would have a cow. Her first order of business was to remove her shirt with surgical precision. Becky didn't want there to be any contact between the potentially contaminated shirt and her bare skin. It took a full 5 minutes to take it off, but she was successful in avoiding any exposure. She was left standing in the kitchen wondering if laundry soap would be enough to remove any harmful substances Hideki might have had on the letter. She shrugged and tossed all of her clothes in the wash and ran upstairs to shower. The entire time she was in there, her thoughts were plagued with all the possible ways Hideki could break into the house. The Hyuga clearly weren't doing a good enough job maintaining the perimeter, so she would have to do a sweep on the house to make sure it was secure. After she had tossed on some comfortable leggings and a baggy t-shirt, Becky went about locking every window in the house. Most of the windows slid open. She would have to tell Neji they needed wooden rods to stick in the track to make it so they couldn't be slid open from the outside. She heard Hinata coming up the drive, so she grabbed a book and hopped on the sofa, trying to look as casual as possible. Hinata walked through the door and sighed as she tossed her keys in a bowl on the kitchen table. Hey Becky, how was your day? Pretty uneventful. How about you? Becky turned a page in the book. Long and tiring. Hinata sat down on the couch across from her. Kurenai-sensei hasn't been feeling well, so we trained with Asuma-sensei and his team. Hinata patted Becky's leg. Do you mind starting dinner tonight? I'm going to go shower. Yeah, sure. Becky tossed aside the book and walked into the kitchen. Curry sound okay? A cloud of worry crossed Hinata's face. How hot do you make it? Becky sighed. I promise I will cut the spice in half. You flings have the heat tolerance of ducklings. Hinata laughed softly and went up the stairs, calling out behind her. Don't let Rock Lee hear you say that. Becky spent the rest of the night battling her inner need to warn Hinata about the impending danger of Hikiri and the need to keep her promise to Neji. Hinata could sense Becky was troubled and kept trying to lure it out of her. Becky could feel herself cracking under the scrutiny of Hinata's lavender orbs of innocence, so she turned the conversation to the one topic that would take the heat off of her. Had any letters from Naruto lately? Becky asked. Yes. You could almost see the gears switch in Hinata's head. Her eyes lit up like a Christmas tree and she couldn't stop smiling while she talked. He was telling me about the beach town they're training in. It sounded so charming. It's around the time of year that all the turtle eggs hatch on the beach. The ones that hatch during the day don't usually make it, because seagulls and all kinds of other predator animals are hovering around waiting for them. Naruto was telling me how he witnessed a whole nest of them hatch at night, making it all the way to the water unmolested. He called them clever little ninja turtles. Becky just smiled to herself and nodded her head while Hinata went on for about 10 minutes without stopping. Oh, sorry. I completely forgot. You have another note from your secret admirer. Hinata handed Becky a crudely made red envelope. Becky opened it and pulled out the note. You are very strong and you work hard, signed your secret admirer, Becky read. Ah. Their craftsman's is getting better. Hinata turned over the envelope in her hands. Last time it was just a piece of construction paper they'd folded in half and taped shut. I know. It'll be presentable in no time. Becky tucked the note into her book. Have you figured out who it is? Hinata edged her head. No. Iruka-sensei asked me if I could help grade some papers for him last Friday. I scoped out the kindergartner's handwriting and I haven't spotted a match yet. Becky leaned back in the sofa and sighed. Have you checked the girls? Hinata suggested. Your secret admirer could be one of the girls wanting to grow up big and strong like you. No. I should. You're right. Becky furrowed her brow as the thought. I guess I would be kind of inspiring to the tater tots. I can't wait to find out who it is, Hinata smiled. Having a secret admirer is so exciting. Becky felt a wave of guilt wash over her. Yeah, it is. As long as you know you have one, she thought. Becky was on her way home from shopping for training clothes. Ebisu was a big fan of making her run drills through woods full of thorny brush and sharp branches. She had torn through at least 3 shirts and a pair of leggings since she had been put under his tutelage. There had been a sale at the store that Becky had been unaware of when she went in. Apparently, every damn kunoichi in the village got their gear there. By the time Becky arrived, almost everything was gone in her size, the lines were out the door, and she had to deal with equally irritable pushy women the whole time. She was trying really hard not to let it ruin her day, so she had decided when she got home she was going to have a nice cup of tea and a soak in the tub. About halfway there, once her mood had finally taken a turn for the better, she heard someone yell out something. Immediately afterwards, she felt something warm splatter on her head, shoulders, and patter against her bag. Becky looked up to see Kiba and Akamaru fly by and her face fell with horror. No, she said as she put down her splattered bags and pulled at her shirt to get a look. Her worst fears had been confirmed. Out here, while minding her own business, at least 15 minutes away from the nearest training ground, she had been peed on. You jerks! Becky screamed, all of her recently regained composure lost. Watch where the hell you're marking. When she got home, she pulled her probably soiled new clothes out of the bags, tossed them in the wash, and stuffed the bags in the garbage. Hinata sniffed. Becky, what's that smell? Akamaru peed on me. A lot. Becky's voice was full of revulsion as she peeled off her pee-splattered shirt and stuffed it in the washer. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hinata cried and ran over to her. Here, Just give me your clothes and I'll get the load started. You go upstairs and get cleaned up. Thanks. Becky finished peeling off her remaining garments and handed them to Hinata. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go take a 5-hour shower. Hinata watched her friend run up the stairs and shook her head. Nothing was worse than being peed on. She would have to talk to Kiba about that. Since she was doing a load already, Hinata tossed a bunch of her dirty clothes in with Becky's. They would just have to sort it all out later. Becky was walking home from training. Today had been especially brutal. Ebisu had actually opened the session up to hand-to-hand combat. Becky had done really well at first, surprising Ebisu with some of the boxing her father had taught her, but then she got why. She left herself open and he took the opportunity to knock her legs out from under her. She had landed hard on a half-rotten tree root and gouged her leg. He had dressed it quickly and ended training for the day. It stung like hell with every step she took. For the first time in over a month, Becky wanted to cry all the way home. The only thing that made it okay was that she was going out with Hinata and the girls tonight. Becky was in the middle of planning her outfit in her head when heard a bark and a cry. To her horror, she immediately felt the spray of dynamic marking. The splatter had caught her mostly on the front this time. Some of it splashed her face, more of it landed right onto her leg dressings. Oh my god, she screamed. This is the last straw, Kiba. You hear me? You are a shitty pet parent with irresponsible potty practices, and I will get you for this. My vengeance will be swift and merciless. Off in the distance, she heard him chuckling. That made her burn with rage. Akamaru would be spared. He was merely a tool Kiba used in his reign of terror. Since the debacle with her attempt at vengeance on Ebisu, Becky had backed off the revenge train. As she watched them leap off into the distance, however, she felt that shit chugga right into the station. The whole way home she plotted. By the time she got to a mortified Hinata, she was less concerned about the fact that there was dog pee in her wound, and more focused on how to get all the parts required for her plot. Becky, you do know we have to meet the girls in 20 minutes, Hinata followed her upstairs. Yeah, Hinata, I know. Becky threw her clothes on the floor of the laundry room. I'm going to shower before I kill something. If you wanna speed things along, grab some clean clothes for me to hop into when I'm done. Hinata nodded. Becky had worn a white lace shirt last week Hinata thought was pretty, so she pulled it out of the freshly laundered clothes that were folded and stacked on Becky's dresser. While she was fishing through it, she grabbed Becky a pair of underwear, a bra, and leggings. She walked back into the bathroom and left them on the counter for Becky. I'm going to go get ready now, Hinata called around the corner as she left the room. Yell if you need something. Hinata sipped a cup of black tea as she surveyed her options. She didn't usually like to drink caffeine this late, but they had started training extra early that morning. She needed the pick-me-up. She set it on the dresser as she pulled out a top from the closet to give it a closer look. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the cup tip. With lightning-fast reflexes, she grabbed the cup out of the air. She had prevented it from falling, but the tea sloshed all over her. Black tea soaked through the bottom of her blouse and all down her right side from her waist to her knee. Shoot! She swore as she hurried downstairs. She tossed the mug in the sink and stripped down. If she didn't treat the tea now, the stain would set and ruin all her clothes. You okay? Becky called from upstairs. Yeah, I'm fine, I just spilled tea all over myself. Hinata sighed with frustration. Can you grab me a change of clothes while you're up there? What do you want? Becky called from Hinata's room. There should be a bunch of stuff on my dresser, Hinata said as she tossed the clothes in the washer and switched out Becky's clothes to the dryer. I need one of everything. Did you tip a pitcher on yourself? Becky called out in disbelief as she tossed the clothes over the balcony onto the bottom stair. No, I'm just gifted I guess, Hinata said as she pulled on the clean clothes. Instantly she could tell something was wrong. Her underwear was way too small in the back and were too form-fitting. Becky had already come downstairs and was halfway out the door, so Hinata didn't have any time to change. She raced out after Becky, feeling more uncomfortable than she had been in months. As they walked through the empty streets to meet up with Ino, Tenten, and Sakura, Becky noticed Hinata's discomfort. What's wrong? Cat got your tongue. Becky edged her head. No. Hinata shifted uncomfortably. My underwear isn't fitting right. Without any warning, Becky reached over and pulled at the waist of Hinata's skirt and peeked down the side. What are you doing? Hinata flushed red as Becky let the waistband snap back into place. They aren't fitting like your underwear because they're mine, Becky said as casually as if she was commenting on the weather. Hinata was mortified. It must have been her mistake. Normally the girls did their laundry separately, but when she helped Becky out the other day, she had run a load of their clothes together. She must have mistakenly sorted some of Becky's underthings into a pile of her own. Oh my god, Becky, I am so sorry. Hinata was crimson. I'll get you another pair. Becky looked at Hinata like she was talking crazy. Hinata, it's just a pair of panties. Wash them and forget about it. Hinata was having trouble understanding why a single girl would have underwear that fit the way these did. They were somewhere between regular underwear and a thong, skin-tight cotton trimmed with lace. Why do you wear these things? Hinata tried to adjust discreetly. They're for when you're wearing leggings or tight stuff like that, Becky explained casually. Better that than everyone sees your panty lines and know exactly what kind you're wearing. Hinata blinked with confusion. You would rather have people think you're not wearing underwear. Becky smiled mischievously. You know, give it an air of mystery. Am I wearing panties? Or is it just stealthy underwear? Who knows? The girls finally reached the karaoke place and joined the other girls in their room. They had already ordered ramune and snacks. They immediately got lost in a sea of power ballads, shish kebabs, and fizzy drinks. Hinata forgot all about the awkward underwear situation until they were walking home. Becky, do you think I could get away with wearing leggings? Hinata asked shyly. I don't see why not, Becky stretched. They're really comfortable and easy to move in. Plus, they show off your assets. Hinata wondered if Naruto would like her in leggings. They didn't show a lot of skin, but Hinata had never worn anything that tight before. Most of her clothes were roomy and comfortable. She had been wrong about the form-fitting underwear, though. She had noticed them every second at first, but now that she had adjusted to them they were pretty comfortable. This weekend can you help me pick out some? Hinata looked at Becky meekly. And maybe some underthings to go with them. Becky rolled her eyes. Panties. Hinata flushed scarlet. It's just a word, Hinata. They're panties. Come on, say it. Bile rose in Hinata's throat. She wasn't wearing her hoodie, but if she had been, she would have thrown up the hood and pulled the cords tight. There was nowhere to hide in her, on the town, outfit. PP panties. Becky sighed. See, you didn't die. I almost had a heart attack, Hinata thought to herself. Yes, Hinata, I will help you pick out leggings and panties this weekend. On one condition. What's your condition? Becky was making her nervous. Then again, any conversation about things as intimate as underwear panties made her unbearably uncomfortable. She just hoped Becky was going to ask to go for smoothies after. We get a matching set, Becky smiled sweetly. That's the kind of thing sisters do. I never had a sister, and I figure you're the closest thing I'll get to ever having one. The idea of picking out underwear specifically to match another person was out of Hinata's comfort zone for sure. That would mean Becky would know what underwear Hinata had, and vice versa. Then again, she was right. They already lived together like sisters and shared almost everything. It might be fun. Oh okay. But nothing too skimpy. Promise. Hinata held out her pinky. I swear, Becky smiled and hooked her pinky with Hinata's. No dental floss. What? Hinata blinked. What did oral hygiene have to do with this? Becky rolled her eyes. I have so much to teach you, girly. The hour was ripe for good old-fashioned payback. Becky had done her reconnaissance on Kiba over the course of several days. She tracked him down to where he lived, quizzed Hinata casually on what locations they used most frequently for training, scouted those locations, and then mapped out what routes he took to each location. Ebisu had given her the day off of training because he was going to be in a very important meeting for most of the day. Her father had also come into town, and her sensei told her she should spend some quality time with him. Becky was determined to do so, once the streets ran with Kiba's tears. That morning, when Hinata told Becky what her squad was doing for the day, she got all the information needed to finally execute her plan. One thing Becky noticed as she strolled down the street was that people didn't ask a lot of questions in Konoha. She liked that. For all they cared, a teenage girl hauling an economy-sized sack of flour was just shinobi conditioning. That was her go-to reply if anyone bothered to ask her what she was doing, anyway. There was a blind spot where a side road turned onto a main street that Kiba took every day. That morning, Becky had watched him leave his house and then raced as fast as she could with a 50-pound sack of flour to that exact spot. She pressed up against the wall, got into position, and waited for her target. After about 7 minutes, she heard the voices of 2 young men approaching. That would be Kiba and Shino, she thought. Shino met with Kiba halfway through this route. When alone, Kiba walked in the center of the street, but when Shino accompanied them, Kiba walked on the inside of the sidewalk with Akamaru trailing behind him. She took one quick precursory look. They were dressed differently today. Then again, they would be training at the yard on the riverbank. It had rained pretty hard the last few days, so it would be too muddy for leather jackets and parkas. The footsteps pattered closer and closer to her location. At last, they turned the corner and she struck. It was a beautiful swing. Becky would have knocked it out of the ballpark, a home run with all the bases loaded, ending the game in a roar of applause. She caught him square in the face, the sack exploding with a gratifying puff as it connected. He spun almost 360 and collapsed on the ground. Gotcha! She cried out as she threw the sack on the ground, touchdown style. Hey, what the hell? Becky looked up and the smile melted off her face. The 2 she had attacked hadn't been Kiba and Shino. The guy she thought was Shino was older and taller than she had originally believed, and was dressed head to toe in black and sporting kabuki face paint. The kid she had clipped was her age, dressed all in red. He was face down on the pavement and hadn't moved since she hit him. All 3 of them looked like they had been in a snowstorm. The kid she hit had flour in his hair and all over his coat, making him look like a depressing snowman. The flour that had been projected in the air by the bursting of the sack drifted softly and soundlessly to the ground, its graceful silence an elegant soundtrack to her stupidity. Oh my god, I am so sorry, I thought you were someone else. Becky grabbed a hold of her hair and started apologizing. Hey, what happened? Kiba and Shino arrived on the scene, 2 minutes later than scheduled. Is that the case, Cage? Kiba cried in disbelief, then turned on her with a scowl. Becky, what the hell? Horror gripped at her heart and it slowly sank down into her stomach. Adrenaline sent a chill down her spine and her stomach turned. In a terrible case of mistaken identity, Becky had incapped the cage and was literally standing over him holding the bag. Don't just stand there, stupid. Kiba snarled at her. Go get a doctor. I'm going to want to talk to you when you get back. The tall boy grabbed her by the shoulder and stared her down menacingly. Becky gulped and ran for the hospital. She bobbed and weaved like a ballerina, leaping over gurneys and around wheelchairs until she found Sakura. Sakura, there is a situation, Becky panted. She knew she probably looked crazy. That's how everyone looked when they realized they had done the thing that would ruin their life. I need you to come with me. What is it? Sakura's face twisted with concern. What happened, Becky? I'll explain on the way. Becky started down the hallway. Basically, I accidentally knocked someone out with a bag of flour. You what? Sakura shook her head. Okay, don't freak out, but I was trying to get payback on Kiba for having Akamaru pee on me twice. Becky closed her eyes and took a deep breath before continuing. I was going to smack him with a bag of flour and it would explode, and everyone was going to laugh at him, then we would all go home happy. Except Kiba, Sakura commented. Well, he got lucky. Becky forced herself to continue, her voice wavering. I didn't end up clipping Kiba. I thought it was him coming around the corner, but it was kind of the cage. Sakura stopped dead. Becky slowed down and turned to face her. You hit the cage, in the face, with a bag of flour. Sakura kept her voice even, but Becky could feel the heat building beneath the surface. And knocked him out. Becky covered her mouth. Why did she say things before thinking? You knocked out the cage with a bag of flour. Sakura repeated. I know, I am in so much trouble, but come on, please, he needs medical attention. Becky was interrupted by Sakura pulling on her braid like she was ringing a bell. Oh wow 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 www. Becky cried as Sakura began dragging her to the steps of the Hokage's mansion. Where are they? Sakura gave the braid another tug. Becky winced before replying in a wounded voice. On Destiny Road, just before the bento shop. You stay right here. Sakura gave her braid one more tug before she started off down the street. Don't you dare move until I get back. You're in trouble, the guard oohed at her. Buddy, you don't know the half of it. Becky huffed as she rubbed her sore roots. A few moments later, she heard Seiichiro calling down to her from the Hokage's office. What's going on, Becky? What are you doing here? It's kind of a long story, Becky called up to him, her lip quivering. Well, come on up and tell us, Seiichiro beckoned her. Our meeting hasn't started yet. The guard pretended to slit his throat with his thumb and Becky stuck her tongue out at him. She went upstairs, her stomach sinking further with each step. This was going to spiral out of control, she just knew it. So why the long face? Tsunade chucked her chin. Why haven't you guys started your meeting? Becky avoided Tsunade's piercing gaze. The cage was supposed to be here, but he's late, Tsunade sighed. Which is really unlike him. Becky's heart started to race. She had to tell the truth. It just so happens that I know why he's late. Becky watched her father's face as she spoke. Immediately, something strange happened. He froze like a deer in headlights and Becky could almost see his ears visibly perking up. He kept his face unreadable as stone and stared her down like a hawk. I was going to play a prank on a friend and I ended up pulling it on the cage. Becky had tried to be brave and failed. As soon as the words left her mouth, she pulled the neck of her shirt up over her nose. Tsukimori Haruka, her father's voice was slow and steady. What did you do? Becky was instantly 5 years old again. Her father towered over her like a skyscraper and his voice boomed like thunder. She was more afraid of making him angry than anything the Hokage or the cage could ever do to her. I hit him in the face with a bag of flour and knocked him out. Becky cried out, and then braced herself for the backlash. Her father's jaw dropped. He was dumbstruck. Tsunade choked on her coffee. You knocked out the cage and left him there. Her father lost his cool. He smashed his fist down so hard on the table it splintered. Damn it, he screamed as he surveyed the damage to the table. Damn it, Haruka. Becky started talking so fast, she almost couldn't understand what she was saying. He had people with him and they told me to go get a doctor, so I got Sakura and told her what happened and she made me come here. It's a good thing Sakura is so smart, her father spat. He was trying his best not to scream at her, the evidence of which being a vein throbbing in his forehead. You just caused a damned international incident. I know, Becky squirmed. It's really really bad. You are the daughter of a GETSU official and you attacked the case cage in Konoha. He turned away from his daughter and held his head. This is a cluster. The color drained from Becky's face. Her father never swore. As in never swore, and within the last 10 minutes he had dropped at least 4 big ones. So, should I just go and get my head banned so you can cross it out and I can go live my life on the run now? Becky asked, as serious as the grave. No, Tsunade barked immediately. Becky had forgotten Tsunade was there. She looked at her in confusion, and then turned her attention back to her father. She's right, Becky. Seiichiro rubbed his temples. Running is the worst thing you could do now. I have to think up how to address this. I have never been in a situation this bad before. Can I just go talk to him? Becky squeaked. No. Tsunade barked again. Becky jumped, and when her father smacked the table, she jumped again. You knocked him out, Becky, Seiichiro cried. There's no telling what kind of a mood he's going to be in when he wakes up. I can't believe this. Seiichiro leaned against the table, then suddenly threw up his arms. Here he is, the case cage walking down the street to go to a meeting and bam. He's knocked out by a hurricane of stupid, aka my daughter. Tsunade's phone started ringing. That's probably Konkuro at the hospital to tell me what's happened, Tsunade said as she picked it up. Seiichiro took his daughter by the shoulders and brought her eye to eye with him. The case cage is a very dangerous person, Becky. I watched him compete in the Chunin exams a few years ago. He popped people like balloons. There was true fear in his voice. You stay as far away from this as possible. I will figure it out. Dad, I did this, I should be the one to face it, Becky countered. If this were anyone else, I would agree, Seiichiro shook his head. At the rate this is going, you might have to commit seppuku. Becky blinked, waiting for the joking smile but there was none. He was serious. Oh okay. A chill went down her spine. She knew she had messed up, but Becky hadn't realized that honor suicide might be on the table. Now go on home and stay there. Stay there. He poked her nose, hard. Wait. No, I'm calling Neji. Why? Becky balked. I can walk home myself. I want him to escort you there, he said as he dialed the number into the secondary office phone. There's no telling what's going to happen because of this. I would feel better if you had an extra pair of eyes on you. Or an extra 100, Becky thought grimly. As Neji walked her home, he kept a vice grip on her arm and walked with such haste he was almost pulling her along. Why don't we just run? Becky suggested sarcastically. Because running looks suspicious, Neji had his Byakugan activated and kept scanning their surroundings as they moved. And this isn't. Becky poked his ribs. Neji stopped and looked at how he was holding her. He adjusted his pace so they were in line as they walked, but he did not relax his grip. How much trouble am I in? Becky's voice was soft and she kept her eyes on her feet. It's not so much what you did and what your personal consequences will be so much as what this means for the villages. Neji's gaze hovered on a spot for a moment. He assessed the threat, dismissed it, and moved on. Of all times for Naruto to be out of town, he could have smoothed this whole thing over in a minute. Becky was growing very concerned. Everyone was acting like the sky was falling and it was all her fault. She didn't want to act like a baby in front of her dad, but he was scaring her. Everyone was scaring her. Was the case cage really that dangerous of a person that he would start an international issue over a prank gone wrong? Neji, I'm scared. The fear got the best of her. Her eyes were watering and her lip was trembling. Neji's look softened and he smiled comfortingly. It's going to work itself out, Becky. Everything always does. He gave her hand a squeeze for reassurance. Now let's get you in the bomb shelter. Not funny, Neji, not funny. But she smiled anyway. The day dragged along. Neji hovered over Becky like a buzzard on carrion. Her father had come by and informed her that he would probably have to commit seppuku. He asked Hiyashi to be his second, to which the head of the Hyuga told him it would be his honor. To Becky it all seemed like some morbid joke that at any moment everyone would burst out laughing. They never did. It was unsettling. Hinata had come home having heard everything from Kiba and Shino. She held Becky in her arms as they sat on the couch waiting for news. This is getting out of hand. Becky looked outside. It was around sunset. They're blowing this way out of proportion. Hinata nodded in agreement and Neji grunted, his Byakugan activated and concentrating to his fullest to detect incoming threats. Becky didn't like the way he seemed so sure there would be assassins. I have to go talk to the cage. Becky pulled away from Hinata and stood. Becky, everyone says it's best for you not to get involved, Hinata protested. Look, if he's the cage, he deals with all kind of ridiculous stuff all day long, Becky reasoned. And he was elected, right? If he was really so unreasonable, they wouldn't have voted for him. I believe that enough to take a risk on it. The Hyugas were silent. The guard on the south wall is thin tonight. If we're quick we can have you over the wall and on your way in 3 minutes, Neji folded his arms. You're right, Becky, Hinata patted her shoulder. It's probably better if you try to get ahead of all this. Thanks guys, you're the best. Becky smiled and pulled both of them into a hug. Neji sighed. I'll create a diversion, Hinata you stay here and pretend you're with Becky. If you are questioned about tonight, say she went upstairs to lay down. You stayed downstairs to make snacks. That will give us an opening of about an hour and a half. That should buy you enough time, Tsukimori. Go now. Becky booked it out the back door and toward the south wall. She shimmied up and over it, landing as deftly as a cat. She took off at top speed for the hospital, thankful she had such understanding friends. When she arrived in the hospital lobby, Becky slipped inside amidst the chaos of a changing shift of nurses. She found Sakura and pulled her into a storage room. What are you doing? I have patients I need to get to. Sakura swung at her assailant, but then saw it was Becky and calmed. Oh, it's you. What is it this time? I need one more really big favor, Becky pleaded. Sakura eyed her down. I need you to get the big scary guy out of the cage's room. Becky jerked her head towards the room the kabuki guy was guarding. Kankuro. That's the cage's older brother and Suna's head of security. He couldn't be peeled from Gaara's side with a crowbar. Sakura explained. The cage is awake, right? Becky begged. I just need, 2 minutes with him. Tsunade and my dad and Hiyashi are all blowing this up and I need to talk to him, man to man. Try to stop this before it requires someone to commit seppuku. Sakura laughed until she saw the grim expression on Becky's face. I'm serious about the seppuku thing. That's how hard my dad is taking this, Becky bit her lip. This might put him out of a job, Sakura. Please. Sakura thought long and hard. Finally, she shook her head and sighed. Fine, I've got something, but you owe me. I want that gold top you wore to the diner last Thursday night. It's yours. Tears welled in Becky's eyes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Becky pulled Sakura into a tight hug and kissed her on the cheek. She pushed Becky away, but flushed all the same. Knock it off, Sakura mumbled as she walked out. This will probably get you 5-10 minutes tops. Don't waste it. Got it. Becky smiled, then positioned herself around a corner and listened. Hey Kankuro, can I talk to you for a minute? Sakura waved him over. Yeah, sure, what's up? He left his post by the door to walk beside her. I figured you would want to speak about this privately, Sakura gestured down the hall. Becky heard their footsteps fading as they headed away. What's going on? Kankuro's voice was growing softer as they moved out of sight. He doesn't have any brain damage or anything, right? Becky hated herself even more. The big guy was just the cage's worried brother, and by the sound of it was probably a pretty okay person. He'll be okay in there for a bit. She heard Kankuro ask. Security here is great, Kankuro. You have nothing to worry about. Sakura opened a door to a staff room. As soon as she heard it click shut, Becky tiptoed into the cage's room. He was obscured from view by a curtain. All she could see from the door was the edge of his bed and the outline of his legs under the blanket. You can come in, I'm awake. The sudden sound of his voice startled her. Becky froze for a moment, but then remembered how much more afraid of her dad she was than this stranger. She approached the curtain but remained on the other side of it. Hi, Cage-sama. Becky had no idea how or where to begin. She decided introducing herself was probably a good start. I'm Tsukimori Becky, I was the one that hit you with the bag of flour earlier. She saw the outline of a hand silhouetted against the curtain by the moonlight. He pulled back the curtain to get a look at her. All traces of the flour were gone, and Becky got to see what the cage looked like without a dusty white coating. The first things she noticed were his hair and his eyes. His hair was a beautiful shade of deep red, and he had startling green eyes that held an intelligence, no, a wisdom far beyond his years. His expression was calm, but his gaze was keen. He was silently sizing her up. Becky suddenly felt self-conscious. She should have brushed her hair before she broke out of the compound and infiltrated the hospital. He watched her patiently, waiting for her to speak. Are you okay? Was the next thing that automatically burst out of her mouth. At least her subconscious was compassionate. I'm fine. His gaze never strayed from her eyes. They're keeping me overnight to monitor my concussion. I'm really sorry about that. Becky wanted to wring her hands, but kept them steady by her side. He was the victim, not her. She needed to face what she did like a man. The hitting you in the face and knocking you out thing. Becky struck a deep bow. I'm assuming that was an accident. It was a question, but he framed it like a statement. Yes, a sad case of mistaken identity. She didn't lift her head. Knowing those green eyes were there made her nervous to look up. I can't say that I've been in this situation before, or that I ever will be again. He was perfectly calm. I'm not angry, and I'm not the type to hold a grudge, Miss Tsukimori. I am so happy to hear that. Becky lifted her head with a smile. My father is the ambassador for Getsugakur and he has been beside himself about this. Was he concerned I would retaliate? He asked. I think it was the uncertainty of what the outcome would be, she explained. He's worked with a lot of different politicians in a lot of different situations. They aren't a very predictable breed. He's also very old school, with the preserving family honor and everything. Seppuku may or may not have been on the table. He shook his head and then turned his gaze on her again. Come here, he beckoned her with a single wave of his hand. Becky walked the few remaining feet over to the bottom of the bed and stopped. The cage motioned for her to come even closer. Nervously, Becky took a few more steps. She was now standing right next to him, so their faces were only a foot or so apart. Becky wasn't sure what was going to happen. She couldn't read his face at all, but she knew she was in no danger. Becky was glad she had trusted her instincts about him. The cage actually seemed really interesting, like the kind of person you could have a deep philosophical conversation with. In spite of his lack of eyebrows and the mask-like rings of dark circles around his eyes, he was handsome. Becky would have spent more time on that line of thought, but he finally made a move. The cage reached over on the side table, snatched something, and swung for her face. She was too startled to react, but instead of feeling a weapon plunge into her skin, she felt the lines of a stamp press into her forehead. He pulled away his official seal and put it back on the side table. There. Now your father will know we've reached a resolution. The cage folded his hands in his lap. Thank you, Cage-sama. Becky smiled and gave him another deep bow. You should go. She felt the eyes peering at the top of her head. Kankuro is coming back. Thank you again. Becky waved as she slid open the window and climbed outside. What the hell are you doing in here? Kankuro yelled at her as she leapt out the window. He ran over, considering pursuit. After weighing the risks, he shook his head and slammed the window shut. Sakura said security here was tight. Bullshit. She was just here to apologize. Kankuro, Gaara reassured his brother. She poses no threat. She isn't a threat. Do you know what a security nightmare this has created? Kankuro gestured out toward the window. This girl we know nothing about knocked you out with a bag of flour. That means every asshole with a pantry who wants to make a name for himself is going to come after you. And that's not something we can search people for, Gaara. What are we going to ask? Excuse me, but are you heading home from market to bake a cake, or is this another flour-based assassination attempt? I don't mind a little misinformation floating around, Gaara gave a tiny smile. Now that everyone thinks flour is my weakness, they'll show up without a backup plan. This has actually made your job easier. I suppose that's true. Kankuro collapsed into an armchair. So what's the deal with you? What are you talking about? Gaara asked. This is twice now you've let her get close enough to touch you. Kankuro pointed at him angrily. I'm not doing it. Gaara shook his head, slight confusion furrowing his brow. It's just happening. Kankuro narrowed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. This phenomenon warranted further investigation. Becky came through the gate of the Hyuga compound just as her father was about to exit. There you are, he yelled. I thought I told you to stay put. Look, Dad. Becky pointed excitedly at her forehead. I talked to the cage and he forgave me. Seiichiro squinted, grabbed her wrist, and dragged her into the light. Hiyashi and Neji walked over to see what the commotion was about. My God, it's his official seal. Seiichiro dropped her wrist. Becky, how did you? I just told him it was an accident and I was really sorry. Becky jumped up and down. I told you it would all be alright if I could just talk to him. Well, I guess that means this is sorted out. Seiichiro rubbed the back of his head. You're grounded. Becky stared at him in open-mouthed disbelief. Dad, I avoided an international incident. That you caused in the first place. Seiichiro poked her chest accusingly. Fine, I'll go to my room, Becky huffed as she trudged away. Don't wash your face. We have to show Tsunade that in the morning. Seiichiro called after her. I don't understand. Neji shook his head. The cage is a no-nonsense person. I would have thought that a situation like this would have ended with more consequences. I wonder what has softened him up so much. A woman, Seiichiro and Hiyashi said in unison. They both shook their heads and walked off to ponder their own thoughts. Why is everyone around here so broody? Neji asked as he headed back to his room. Hina-chan, I did it. Becky cried out as soon as she walked in the door. You did it. Oh wow. Hinata looked at the seal. It's kind of funny he put it there. I don't know why either. Maybe that's where they stamp people in Suna. Becky smiled. I think he was messing with you. Hinata brushed the hair out of Becky's face. That guy. Becky laughed. Something tells me humor isn't his strong suit. That doesn't mean he doesn't have a sense of humor. Hinata folded her arms. So tell me all about it. Becky described her infiltration of the hospital, Sakura's assist, and her conversation with the cage. She caught herself smiling as she talked about him. He was not like any of the leaders Becky had ever met. He was a completely different breed of cage. She commented on how he thought before he spoke and how perceptive he seemed. She realized she had been talking for about 10 minutes straight and stopped. Hinata was standing there, smiling broadly behind her hands. What's with the face? Becky eyed her suspiciously. You like him? Hinata mocked Becky with her own words. I think you can admire a person and oh my god, I'm doing it now, Becky lamented. Shut me up. He's so out of my league. Hinata laughed. It's okay to have a crush on someone you admire, Becky. That's actually the best kind of person to like. They make you want to be stronger and be a better person. Hinata looked at her with a hint of mischief. The other thing you need to remember is no one is out of your league until you give up. Becky looked at her friend, at how much joy was on her face, and it was no detective work to figure out who she was thinking of. This Naruto kid needs to show up already. Becky started up the stairs, the exhaustion of the day catching up with her. He's all you people ever talk about. It's like everyone watched this incredible movie and talk about it all the time and I haven't seen it yet. I hope he comes home soon, too. Hinata smiled sadly. Come on, we've had a long day. Let's get some sleep. Sounds good, Becky yawned. Kid, I don't know how you pulled this off, but good work. Tsunade examined Becky's forehead, the girl's chin in her hand. Unless, of course, you stole his seal. Then you are in a world of trouble. Becky shook her head violently. You really think I would be stupid enough to try to pickpocket that guy? Good point. Tsunade patted Becky's chin. But there will be repercussions for this. I'm ready to accept my punishment. Becky bowed. No real damage had been done, plus Becky had dealt with the aftermath herself. No skin off the Hokage's nose. She would probably get some grunt work and a slap on the wrist. 50 hours of community service and a ban on buying flour within 50 miles of the city limits for a year. Anyone found providing you with flour will be considered aiding and abetting and will be liable for fines up to 3,000 ryo and 2 months in jail. Tsunade folded her arms. That's kind of steep, Seiichiro mumbled. This was a ridiculous crime that deserves a ridiculous punishment. Tsunade shot him a challenging look. It actually makes a lot of sense, Dad. Becky smiled. Tsunade was going to let her off easy. If you're okay with it, whatever. Seiichiro shuffled uncomfortably. Just know she's probably going to have you picking garbage out of the river or something. I'll just help out at the school, Becky smiled. Uruka-sensei has already asked me to. Say, isn't your rescheduled meeting soon? Yes it is, Tsunade smiled. How about you get a start on those community service hours by picking up some lunch for us all? Yes Lady Hokage, Becky saluted. What do you guys want? Just get some bentos from the diner across the street, her father waved dismissively. Okay. I'll be back. Becky skipped out the door. The guard gave her the stink eye. What's with the mark on your head? Did you hear about the flower incident? Becky covered it self-consciously. The guard gave her a weird look and shook his head. Becky looked around suspiciously, gave him a conspiratorial look, then held her finger to her lips. The guard's brows furrowed with confusion, and he mouthed, "What?" as she skipped down the stairs. She knew she should probably wash off the mark, but she was nowhere near running water. There was no other choice, so she took her mirror out of her kunai bag, licked her hand, and rubbed away the red ink. It left a pink splotch on her forehead she would need soap to get rid of, but that was better than legible ink. The bento shop was backed up about 10 orders. Becky waited 5 minutes to place her order and they told her it would be almost an hour before they'd be ready. The chef told her that she could leave and come back to keep the place from getting overcrowded. Becky walked outside the shop and wandered down the street a ways. Her thoughts kept wandering to the cage in his hospital bed. They had resolved the issue but she still felt guilty. Becky, a complete stranger, had knocked him out. All she had to do was ask, and he forgave her completely. She found herself standing outside the flower shop. Was it weird to get a guy flowers? It seemed like an innocuous enough thing to do. People had given her dad flowers before. Usually they were because they knew he had a daughter, but hey. She walked inside. Hey flower girl, Ino smirked at her. Hey flower girl, Becky sighed. What are you doing in here? Ino asked, looking to perform another assault. No, I'm obviously hunting for elephants, Becky rolled her eyes. I'm looking for a thank you present. Becky's eye caught on a small selection of tiny cactus. Something about them was absurdly cute. They were little squat needly saguaros in terracotta pots no bigger than a pen cup. She smiled to herself. The cage is from the desert, and these are the trees of the desert. It would be like giving him a bonsai. The symbolism was perfect. I'll take this, Becky said, holding up the stoutest and squattest cactus of them all. If you say so, Ino eyed her choice disapprovingly. Becky paid for her item and walked out of the shop. She walked back down the street to the diner and tucked the little cactus safely into her kunai pouch. As she carried the bentos up to the Hokage's office, she did her best not to jostle the pouch. As she basked in her genius, all she could think about was how great this was all going to turn out. Kankuro was extra jumpy that morning. As he walked Gaara to the meeting, every shadow was a threat. Gaara seemed completely unfazed by the events of the previous day and acted as though it had never happened. When they finally arrived at the Hokage's mansion, Tsunade stood and walked over to introduce Gaara to Seiichiro. Tsukimori Seiichiro, this is the cage, Gaara no Suna, Tsunade gestured to the cage. I'm glad to finally meet you, Cage-sama, Seiichiro bowed politely. And you as well, Ambassador Tsukimori, Gaara held out his hand to shake. I believe I had the pleasure of meeting your daughter yesterday. Seiichiro, for all his composure, visibly blanched. He took the cage's hand and shook it. I do apologize for her mischief. She's young and a little impulsive. There was no harm done, Gaara said graciously. I am looking forward to finally holding this meeting. As soon as their hands parted, Becky awkwardly stumbled in with the stack of bentos. Oh, she fumbled awkwardly. Hi, Becky. When I said this would count towards your community service hours, I didn't mean you should take hours to do it. Tsunade's voice was full of impatience. Sorry Tsunade-sama, Becky held up the bags apologetically. There was a long line and they lost my order in the shuffle. They gave me extra food for it though. Then this sounds like it'll be a meeting over lunch. Seiichiro took the bags and set them on the table. He did a quick count of the bentos, grabbed two, and simultaneously handed them to the cages. There's Dad, Mr. Smooth, Becky thought. He'd played this game long enough to know although common courtesy would be to present Tsunade with a bento first, a diplomat never showed any favor outwardly to anyone. He then handed one to Kankuro, who waved it off, so Seiichiro handed it to Becky. It was the last one. No pops, I'm okay to go grab another one, Becky protested. Take it, girl, and go eat it on the roof, her father ordered. After what happened yesterday, it was likely she was going to be discussed. Becky knew better than to argue with him when he used that tone and went outside. I'll be back, Kankuro said as soon as the door shut and followed after her. Gaara watched him go and gave him a cautioning look. So, without further ado, let's start this meeting. Tsunade cracked open her bento. Becky sat on the roof facing the village and opened her bento. The smell of katsu and curry made her stomach growl. She had been so caught up in picking out that cactus she hadn't realized how long it had been since she had eaten last. She broke apart her chopsticks and was mid-bite when a shadow fell over her. It's time we had that talk, Kankuro's voice was dangerously low. Becky looked up at him innocently. He was putting on his best tough guy attitude, but after she saw how he acted about his brother in the hospital, she wasn't fooled. She patted the spot next to her. Sit with me, she smiled. No, I think I'll stay standing. He folded his arms. Suit yourself, she took a bite. But I hope you don't mind if I have my lunch. Kankuro stared her down for a long minute and then sighed. This girl was a lot of things, but it was clear she was no would-be assassin. He sighed with frustration and asked, how did you do it? Do what? Becky blinked. Get past Gaara's defenses. Kankuro's patience growing thin. I still have no idea what you're talking about, Becky said, nibbling on her katsu. Gaara's sand, Kankuro explained. It's nearly impossible to get past. What kind of technique did you use? Just to reiterate, Becky put down her chopsticks. He wasn't my target, number one. Number 2. I was just looking to clock my friend in the face with a bag of flour. Good old-fashioned bakery fisticuffs. I didn't use any technique, I mean, unless you count that I hid in a blind spot. Konkuro stood there silently as he pondered what Becky said. What could have negated Gaara's defensive abilities? The only times Gaara had been taken down were by incredible speed or massive force, neither of which Becky possessed. He decided he would need to go investigate the scene of the crime further. He hopped off the roof, and he heard Becky lean over the side and yell after him. Bye. She waved, smiling. That girl is strange. Very strange, he thought as headed for the alley. Becky finished her bento and swung downstairs to drop it in the trash. It was a beautiful sunny day and it had been nice on the roof, so she climbed back up there and basked in the sunshine. She was wearing her mother's gauntlets to adapt to their weight. Her father did the same with his armor. She extended and retracted the blades a few times to test the feel, and then laid down with her hands crossed behind her head. She closed her eyes and listened to the wind and the people. At times like this she could almost fool herself into believing she was back home, laying on the deck of the shrine. Except here there was no gentle lapping of the lake water or the buzz of dragonflies. Just then she heard the door to the Hokage's office open, and her father saying they should take a 15-minute break. She got ready to hop down there to talk to her dad, but immediately he started bickering with Tsunade about something unrelated to work. It sounded like the odds on a fighter in an upcoming prize fight. Becky knew her dad didn't have many adult friends, so she didn't like to interrupt him when he bantered with Tsunade. She sat back down on the roof and looked out over the village once more. It had been about 3 months she had spent in Konoha, and she felt like she was finally starting to adjust. It didn't quite feel like home yet, but she didn't feel like an outsider anymore. The shopkeepers greeted her by name, and several of the guards and school personnel talked to her on a regular basis. She missed Reika, Ren, and all the other familiar faces of her hometown, but there was always something to do in Konoha. It made it easy to distract herself. Do you always wait for your father to finish with his meetings? Becky jumped a little and looked over shoulder. The cage was incredibly quiet considering the giant gourd strapped to his back. Sometimes, Becky said automatically. It depends on if it's going to be a sprint or a marathon. A marathon. He narrowed his eyes slightly. My dad calls days when a difficult issue is being discussed or when someone has dug in their heels a marathon, because they go on for hours with no end in sight, Becky explained. A day like today is a sprint, everyone is on board and there's a clear objective in mind. No egos involved. It sounds like he has been in politics a long time. Gaara looked towards the door. He has, Becky reflected. He started out as a representative for our village 10 years ago and took the position as ambassador about 7 years ago. Oh, duh. She had been adjusting how she was sitting when the cactus pricked her through the bag. I have something for you. He gave her a puzzled look. A thank you gift, she said as she fished it out of her bag. It had poked a few holes in the canvas but was otherwise unscathed. She held out the tiny cactus and smiled. He stared blankly at her for a long time. A cloud of worry passed over her face. Becky's face darkened with worry of her own, and Gaara realized he hadn't responded in a while. He tentatively held out his hand and took the cactus from her. The saguaro was small, maybe the size of a grapefruit, and its color was off. In spite of its shortcomings, somehow the little cactus seemed happy. Thank you, he said at last. Sorry, was that a stupid thing to get you? Becky felt panic rising in her chest. She really needed to stop making bold-faced assumptions about people. Hinata equals sunflowers had worked out, but cage equals cactus. Come on, Becky. She was just about to face palm when he said. It just so happens cacti are my favorite. Trumpets blared and harpsichords strummed out a triumphant melody in her head. 2 for 2, she thought. Oh, I'm glad, She sighed, looking relieved. Keisuke-sama. Her father called from the door of the office. The meeting must be resuming. Gaara looked back towards the door. Goodbye, Miss Tsukimori. You too, Keisuke-sama, she said with a wave. As he stepped off the roof, horror clenched at her throat. Had she said, you too? Oh my god, she thought. I can never speak to him again. After a moment, she composed herself and leaned over the side of the roof. Hey Dad, she hollered. I'm heading back to the highwags. I'll see you later. Alright, be safe, he hollered back. Becky hopped down onto the stairs. The guard had a kind of smug look on his face that she didn't like. She eyed him down, waiting for him to say something snarky, but instead he looked at her, looked in the Hokage's office, and started batting his eyes. He girlishly held his chin in his hand and heaved a deep sigh. Having already suffered enough embarrassment at her own hand, Becky stormed down the stairs. On the last step, she turned, glared at him, and pointed at her eyes with her index finger and pinky, and then at him. She walked down Main Street without another glance behind her. After she was out of sight, Becky reduced her pace and made her way back to Hinata's house with a lot of confused feelings about the boy with scarlet hair. On her way there, she saw Konohamaru training alone. It pulled at her heart to see a lonely kid, and she was in need of a distraction, so she walked over. Whatcha doin', half pint? Becky leaned against a fence post. I'm training to become the Hokage. Konohamaru punched the air. When are you running? I'll vote for you, she joked. Well, Naruto has to be Hokage first, Konohamaru counted off on his fingers. Again, with this Naruto kid, Becky thought. So I'll be Hokage after him. Maybe in 10 years. Becky chuckled to herself at his youthful naivete. There was no way even this Naruto kid would get to be Hokage in 10 years. He would have to single-handedly defend the village from an entire army, while writing poetry, books, and kissing babies at the same time to have a chance at it in 15. You need someone to practice with you. Becky smiled. I'm a Getsu Nin, so I can guarantee I won't be like anyone you've practiced with before. Konohamaru thought about it, then nodded. Well, I guess because my friends aren't here I can practice with you, Becky Nei-san. Ouch, Konohamaru. It's harsh to tell a girl she's your second choice to her face, Becky chuckled, getting into her ready stance. Don't hold back, now. I think can keep up with a future Kage. Wait and see, he said as he charged her. Becky deflected his attacks slowly so they always almost just missed their mark. When she would return strikes, she exaggerated the blow so he had more than enough time to deflect or dodge her attacks. After a few minutes she picked up speed, posing more of a challenge for him both to hit and to avoid. She was at about 3/4 her normal speed when he was at his max capacity. He jumped back to get some space, panting. I'll show you. Konohamaru cried out as he started forming hand signs. Why no jutsu? There was a puff of smoke and instead of a tween boy there was a white teenage girl there instead. Becky burst out laughing. What's so funny? He demanded, his pretty girl face flushing with rage. Are you really trying to use something like that on me? Becky said between bouts of laughter. There were almost tears at this point. It's working though, Konohamaru protested. You think it's funny so you're wide open. Let me show you how easy it is to throw you off using that ridiculous jutsu, Becky said as she reached forward and pulled transformed Konohamaru to her. She grabbed him by the waist, pressed him against her, and planted one long hard kiss right on his mouth. He instantly poofed back to normal and retracted. He was beet red and obviously very embarrassed. Some people you just can't out why, kid. Becky crossed her arms. Tsukimori Becky is one of them. But how? He asked. Distraught his ace in the hole had no effect. There's a shrine in my village, and so part of my training there included how to block out distractions, Becky explained. By the way, that's not what S feel like at all. Think water balloon, not bag of beans. Konohamaru's face was less red, but he still looked uncomfortable. Becky sighed. The poor kid just wanted to be able to keep up with her. Maybe she could show him something cool to make up for it. You wanna see something cool? Becky offered. Konohamaru looked unsure at first, then relented at the chance to see jutsu from a kunoichi from another village. Yeah, okay. What kind of jutsu are you going to show me? Konohamaru inched closer. Becky was pretty sure she wasn't supposed to directly demonstrate any of her village's techniques, so she told him to cover his eyes. I'll let you know when you can look, okay? Becky started performing the hand signs. Are you just gonna run away? There was honest to goodness sadness in his voice. It sounded like that was a very real threat. What kind of jerk would do that? Becky shook her head. No, Konohamaru. Look. He opened his eyes. Becky was shimmering as radiantly as the sun. There was a halo of light around her that swirled and glittered as she moved. It's so bright. Konohamaru shielded his eyes. What kind of jutsu is that? Becky thought about how to explain it in kid terms. I know it seems like it would be anti-camouflage, Becky explained. But what I'm doing is using my chakra to reflect the light around me, which makes it harder to tell where I begin and where I end. It's hard to look directly at me, so that makes me harder to hit, too. Oh, I get it, Konohamaru beamed. Becky released the jutsu and smiled. His friends were coming up the road, calling out his name and waving to him. Okay kid, your friends are here. Becky started walking away. Have fun training. Bye Becky Nei-san, Konohamaru said as he ran to his friends. The rest of Becky's walk home to the Hyuga compound ended uneventfully. Seiichiro had asked Ebisu to take a few days off so he could assess Becky's progress. This evening, her father had challenged her to match of hand-to-hand combat. She prepared by cleaning and oiling the gauntlets and braiding her hair in a coiling halo around her crown. In the last few bouts of hand-to-hand combat, Ebisu had grabbed at her hair. Her father was like to employ the same tactic and she would rather not cut it, so conch braid it was. It was nearly sunset. Her father would be finishing up with his meeting soon. Becky walked down to the training yard they always used when he was in town. It was empty at this time of day. The setting sun cast the field in a warm golden glow and it was perfectly quiet save the happy babbling of a nearby brook. Not wanting to tire herself out before her father arrived, she sat down on a dry patch of grass and started meditating. This was a practice Becky tended to neglect. Stillness was a problem for her, because just like a mirror still lake there was always a current beneath the surface. Becky's difficulties with meditation directly contradicted the skills of her parents. Stillness was what Yukihana had been best at. She meditated so deeply sometimes they would come out the next morning in the winter to find her lightly dusted with snow. Her father prayed all the time, which was pretty much the same thing. The meditating made Becky be still, but it also made her try to make things quiet on the inside. Becky did not like what happened when she stopped the mechanisms of her mind. When she emptied her mind, something would disturb the smooth surface of her thoughts. It was like something woke up inside her when she clocked out and started clawing its way free. Whenever Becky tried meditating and she felt the thing stirring, she would immediately open her eyes and do something physical. It could be to go for a run, or to stand up and shake her head. Anything to wrench back control and bury the shadow. It had been months since the last incident, and today was the day she decided she was going to overcome it. The meditating was starting off well. She focused on her breathing and pictured herself turning off the tap of her thoughts slowly, 1/4 turn at a time. Finally, when the trickle had stopped and her mind was free of thoughts, she just tried to be. She tried to feel the energy behind everything, to feel connected to the world and to find peace and comfort in that connection. She was so busy strumming the strings of the energy around her she didn't feel the first ripples of the ominous something rising to the surface. She was reaching a perfect void state, something that had seldom happened for her, and she breathed deeply and peacefully. Becky was finally beginning to understand why people meditated. It was nice to be so free. Then everything went very wrong very fast. In the darkness behind her eyes, the thing broke the surface. She found herself watching in horror, unable to respond as something rose from the waters of her mind. It was a mangled thing, so misshapen it was hard to tell if it had ever been human. It was pale and its skin was a paper-thin covering on top of bones sticking out at odd angles. What she had at first thought to be the black water pouring off of its head turned out to be miles of sodden hair plastered to its body. The waters of her mind were polluted with it, and she could see the sea inside her was slowly being choked with the stuff. The waters began to rise as the thing moved toward her with its jerky broken gait. It shambled and spasmed like a corpse being moved on strings. She found herself both unable to wake up or to scream. The water rose up above Becky's chin and she gasped for air, but her lungs simply filled with water. The thing reached her and grabbed her face with its horrible twisted hands. It forced her to look at it. This thing, this horrifying nightmarish creature, smiled back at her with her own face. Becky was struck hard across the face. The blow violently knocked her out of her trance and back into reality. She vomited up water, gasping her air. When she had finished retching, she fell down onto her back and gulped in the air. Her father stood over her with a panicked expression on his face. "What happened to me?" she asked between breaths. "I don't know," her father said, hovering over her worriedly. "When I got here, I called out to you and you didn't respond. Then water started spilling out of your mouth and your hair turned black." Becky laid there as the sensation of drowning passed. This had to be some kind of bad omen. "I don't think I should meditate anymore," she said after a long silence. "If that's what happens to you, I don't think you should either." Her father grabbed her hand and helped her up. He looked her over and sighed. "Let's just do some light cardio today. I don't think it would be wise to have you do much else." "All right." Becky steadied herself on her father's arm. They walked off the training field to jog through the woods. She got back to Hinata's right around dinner time. She stripped off her training gear and slipped into some leggings and a sweater before she joined them. It was a balmy summer night, but after what happened earlier she felt like she would never be warm again. Hiyashi, Hinata, and Hanabi all looked concerned, but no one pressed her for answers. Hanabi even refrained from her usual snippy remarks and did her best to keep things semi-pleasant. After dinner, on the walk back to Hinata's house, Hinata wrapped an arm around Becky's waist. "Becky, what's wrong? Are you unwell?" "I don't know." Becky shook her head. "I've felt like garbage since before I trained today." Hinata gave her a squeeze. "I think you're pushing yourself too hard." Hinata frowned. "You know what? The girls and I were planning on going to the hot spring tomorrow. You should join us." Becky didn't want to be near water any deeper than a bathtub after her afternoon, but she couldn't shake the need to feel warm again. "Yeah, that would probably perk me up." Becky nodded. Hinata was still eyeing Becky hard. She reached up and put the back of her hand to Becky's forehead and said, "You're burning up." "I am." Becky blinked. It would make sense that if she had a fever, what happened earlier could have just been a hallucination. "Go get cleaned up." Hinata patted her back. "I can't leave you unattended if you have a fever." "What are you going to do? Stay up watching me all night?" Becky stumbled up the stairs. "No." Hinata sighed and steadied her. "I'll just sleep in your room with you." Becky took a shower and changed into her pajamas. Hinata came in with some chamomile tea for her and they climbed into Becky's bed. Becky sipped on her tea while they chatted. "So," Hinata asked, "did you get to see the cage today?" "Yes." Becky smiled weakly. "I gave him a cactus." Hinata laughed. "You would give someone from the desert a cactus?" Becky pouted. Was she really that predictable? "My logic was that cacti are the trees of the desert, so by giving him a baby cactus it was like giving him a no-stress bonsai." Becky explained, which only made Hinata laugh harder. He said that cacti are his favorite. Becky pouted again. Those were his words exactly. So you're 2 for 2 on the picking plants for people based on your odd logic system, Hinata chuckled. Ain't so odd, then is it? Becky folded her arms smugly. Does your father know you like the case cage? Hinata asked. No, Becky laughed. He told me to stay as far away from him as possible. He said during the Chunin exams, that kid popped people. Like balloons. He did do that. Hinata shifted uncomfortably. Oh, Becky blinked. He changed a lot after he met Naruto, Hinata explained. They're both Jinchuriki and they were both mistreated, so when Naruto talked to him he kind of changed his perspective on things. Gaara worked very hard for his village from then on. The villagers admired how he had changed so much they made him cage. I can see that. He's very thoughtful. Becky furrowed her brow in thought. That's the word I would use. I would have never thought you would go for the mature and dignified type, Becky. Hinata smiled. And I would have never pegged you for the type to go for the wild child. Becky poked Hinata's nose. Opposites attract, I guess. Hinata's smile turned sad. Wait, are you saying you don't think I'm mature or dignified? Becky asked suspiciously. I did have to fish you out of a pond when we first met, Hinata nudged her playfully. Fair point, Becky frowned. The girls continued chatting until the tea did its work and Becky drifted off to sleep. Hinata watched her for a while, periodically checking her temperature until she too fell asleep. The next morning Becky's fever had receded a little, so the girls got ready to go to meet with the other girls at the hot spring. Hina-chan, I need to go shopping for a new swimsuit, Becky said. Why? Hinata asked. Well, I mean, we're probably going to end up going swimming with everyone this summer. Becky held up her swimsuit. It was faded blue with white polka dots and it looked too small for her. I think I went up a cup size since the last time I wore this puppy. Hinata blushed a little. There was a good chance she'd gone up 2 cup sizes since the last time she bought a swimsuit a year ago. Would you get another one piece? Hinata asked, trying not to be obvious as she was fishing for information. Maybe a bikini, one of the ones that show off your butt a little. And a halter top for a little security, she said as she disdainfully her old suit on the bed. Don't get me wrong, a one piece has its time and place, like when you're out with the family and stuff, but I'm kind of sad I let myself get this, resigned. Resigned to what? Hinata blinked. Being painfully single, Becky frowned. Painfully single and more interested in my comfort than looking cute and 15. Hinata bit her lip and thought about it. The girls would probably be up for a trip like that, Hinata said, thinking it would be easier to run an errand like that in a pack than to go out on her own and have all the shop people hounding her. Yeah, I'd be game, Becky smiled. That would be kind of fun, actually. The girls finished getting ready and headed for the hot spring district. It just blows my mind that Konoha is so big that it has a hot spring district and a red light district. Becky said. Wait, it does? Hinata asked. Yeah, Becky chuckled. Didn't you grow up here? Sorry, I guess I just never had any business on that side of town, Hinata said in her meek version of a snippy tone. What were you doing in the red light district? Dad always taught me to get to know the red light district of a village, Becky explained. If you ever have to disappear fast, those types of places are the best ones to go to. Cash only, no questions, no one saw anything. For someone who didn't know a lot about being a shinobi, Becky knew a lot about street life. Hinata wasn't sure if that was a good thing. When they arrived, they were some of the first ones there. The only girl who had beat them was Tenten. Hey girls, Tenten waved. Good morning, Tenten, Hinata smiled shyly. So are the others going to be fashionably late? Becky asked. Sakura will probably be here any minute, Tenten said. Ino is probably still putting on her face. But, we're going into the hot spring, Becky said incredulously. I know, Tenten shook her head. And Ino knows that, too. But she never leaves her house without a full palette of makeup on. Becky started to braid her hair in a halo around her crown. Her hair was very thick and banana clips usually weren't enough to hold her hair in place. She eyed Tenten and Hinata's hair enviously. She was sure Tenten's hair was thin and pretty like Hinata's. If it wasn't, it wouldn't stay so perfectly in those double buns. Soon they saw Sakura coming up the path with Ino. It was too far to make out what they were saying, but it was obvious they were arguing. Those two, I swear, Tenten crossed her arms. I wish they'd just kiss and make up. What are they always fighting about? Becky asked. Sasuke, Tenten and Hinata said in unison. Who? Becky looked puzzled. He was the third member of Team 7 with Naruto and Sakura. She developed a crush on him at the same time as Ino, Tenten explained. They used to be best friends, but that kind of broke them up. Is there a reason I haven't met Sasuke yet? Becky asked Hinata. Well, he's not in Konoha at the moment, Hinata replied, deftly evading the question. Becky was too sharp to be led off the path of good gossip so quickly. This is a story that'll take a while, yeah, and around those two isn't the best time to do it. Tenten whispered as the girls approached the group. Hey guys, sorry we're late, Sakura smiled apologetically. No, we were just a little early, Hinata said graciously. Alright, let's go get. Ino yelled. Both Tenten and Hinata folded their arms across their chests nervously and followed along with the group. They all piled through the doors loudly, gossiping and giggling amongst themselves. Thankfully, the place was all but empty so no one complained. Hinata kept stride with Becky, although she didn't add much to the conversation. Ino and Sakura continued their argument, but now the rest of the girls started chiming in. I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with kissing on the first date. Ino cried out looking to Tenten for support. Sakura shook her head. Where's the line? I would understand a quick peck, but we both know you mean more than that. Tenten flushed. I don't think I could kiss a boy on our first date. Ino jumped in front of her and grabbed her shoulders. But what if he was the one, and everything was going so perfectly it was like something out of a chick flick daydream? If he was the one, maybe, Becky interrupted. Both Ino and Tenten turned to look at her. The question is, how do you know a guy is the one on the first date? You can't. You would have to have known him a long time so that the whole dating thing is just a formality. Then what if you're on the date, and everything is so magical, and the chemistry is just right? Ino clasped her hands together dreamily. He's just too much of a gentleman to lean in and do what you're both thinking. Becky found herself thinking about Gaara. Would she kiss him first? I don't know, Becky shook her head. I think this is one of those things where there's no universal right. It depends on the guy. So, is it okay to kiss on the first date? Ino squared off with her to look her dead in the eye. I'll give you a very solid, maybe, Becky smirked. Sakura though for a moment. I still think that if it's the right guy then he won't try for a kiss on the first date. A relations isn't a race. Well then how can you let him know for sure that you want another date? Ino asked. The person here with the most experience is being the quietest, Sakura side-eyed Hinata. How'd it go for you, Ms. Long-term relations? Hinata blushed a deep shade of crimson as she thought about the first time her and Naruto kissed. Sorry, I don't kiss and tell. Hinata gave them a weak smile. They all groaned in frustration as they walked into the changing room. The girls lined up along a set of lockers and began to disrobe. Becky had gone through this procedure before, but at mixed bath onsens with her father. She hadn't been to one in a while and it was a little daunting to disrobe in front of girls she hadn't known long. Oh well, she thought. It's nothing they haven't seen before. In spite of herself, and just for comparison's sake, Becky took discreet side glances at her companions. They were all obviously very athletic, but even within that category their bodies varied. Sakura was as flat as a washboard, but she was the most muscular of them all. Tenten had a bit more going on up top, but she was probably the shortest and thinnest in the group. Ino's body looked almost the same out of clothes as it did in them. She was thin and shapely in the way that boys liked, with an equal amount of bump in the front at the back. Becky would have been jealous if she didn't find Ino a totally repulsive slut. Becky was the most curious but also the most uncomfortable about sizing Hinata up. Hinata was her friend and roommate, and she had helped Becky into the bath, so it only seemed fair Becky would get to see her too. She was probably the softest looking out of all the girls, with the least amount of visible muscle tone, and the biggest in the room. Becky probably landed somewhere in the middle in terms of S. Hinata's were the best, and then it was a toss-up between Becky and Ino for second. Ino's were shapelier than Becky's, but Becky's were larger overall. Then it would be Tenten and then Sakura. Poor girl, Becky thought. Sakura had the best arms and back, Ino had the best legs, Tenten had this overall cute dainty thing going on, and that left Becky with having arguably the best butt in the room. I can live with that, Becky thought. She had been doing her best to keep up with the conversation as she sized the other girls up. Are you part of a squad, Becky? Tenten asked. Becky had been hoping his question didn't come up. She was, but it was a squad where they tossed all the loners that didn't quite fit in other groups. Yes, she responded. I'm in a squad with my friend Ren and a boy we went to school with, Daisuke. The whole group broke out into mumbling. 2 girls on a squad, huh? Sakura asked. I've never heard of that. Becky heard that statement as, it doesn't sound like a good idea. Well, we've done a lot of missions, but most of it has been in-house, Becky sighed in frustration. My father is the ambassador, so the king thought he was doing Dad a favor by keeping me out of the dangerous stuff. Unfortunately, that gives my squad a bad representative because they all think it's favoritism and we aren't as good as they are. Oof. Ino pantomimed being hit in the gut. Sorry we asked. They all started to make their way into the hot spring, continuing their conversation as they climbed in. What do they have to be so high and mighty about? Sakura asked. I don't know, Becky sighed. Most of the talk lately is about how I'm basically being kept here as a piece of collateral and not doing anything productive at all for our village. A brief silence passed over the girls, due to the realization that Becky was in fact officially in the village as a guarantee and not a person. Well, they sound like bitches, Ino said flatly. Becky smiled. Maybe Ino wasn't so bad after all. Ino's eyes lit up. Hey, you know what's been bothering me? Who did you buy that cactus for? All eyes turned on Becky and Hinata giggled softly behind her hand. No one, Becky lied, badly. Buy, no one, could you mean the cage? Ino drilled her. Becky felt the heat rising in her body. She was probably as red as Hinata gets when someone says the word. Her silence was going to give it away. Becky had to say something quick. Knowing smiles were already forming on all of their faces. It was just a thank you for not starting an international incident over the whole flower debacle, Becky explained in a puff. Yeah, I've been meaning to ask why there are pictures of you in the grocery stores saying, do not sell flour to this person. Tenten asked. Oh my god, you didn't hear about that. Ino blurted in surprise. So bitchy here. Becky cringed. It was like Ino specialized in being unbearably annoying. Wanted to get revenge on Kiba for having Akamaru pee on her a couple times, so she went and bought a bag of flour and waited around a corner for him, Ino explained. Becky kept her mouth shut. No one needed to know about the week of Rakan spent tracking his movements, timing his walking speed, and comparing different flour brands for their gratifying, poof, factor. So, when she thought Kiba was coming around the corner, she jumped out and smacked him in the face with it, and it exploded like an overstuffed pillow. The whole street looked like freaking Christmas, Ino continued. It all would have been hilarious, if it hadn't been the cage she'd hit in the face and knocked out. Tenten's eyes bulged. You incapped Gara with a bag of flour. Becky smiled nervously. This is how she would always be remembered, she just knew it. The flour sack ninja. You didn't have weights in it? Tenten asked. It was just a regular bag of flour. And you weren't using any jutsu? No, Becky explained. I clipped him just right and it was just unexpected enough to catch him off guard, I guess. But Lee and Naruto are the only ones I've ever heard of landing a hit on him, Tenten shook her head. And Lee is the fastest person in the village and Naruto is the strongest. Most stubborn, I would say. Sakura corrected. How could they say you aren't doing anything for your village? Ino asked sheepishly. You almost pulled off a political assassination. Oh shove it, Ino, Becky rolled her eyes. I would have bought that guy a lot more than a cactus, that's for sure, Tenten said. At least offered him more, anyway, Ino said flirtatiously. Oh my god, Ino, Becky was losing her patience. It's not like you could walk up to the cage and be all, oh, hey, I'm the girl that almost killed you with a bag of flour. Wanna have? Hinata immediately burst out laughing. They all stared at her bug-eyed. I'm sorry Becky, she said between bouts of laughter. It's just I can almost see you doing something like that. Hinata, Becky yelled, feeling a little betrayed. Maybe not offering him, but, Hinata explained, just being so casual about something that ridiculous. Well, I mean, Becky deflated a little. If you did something crazy, you should own it. After the girls had soaked and gossiped their cares away, they started heading toward town for victuals. Becky wasn't sure if it was the heat, the embarrassment, or the self-inflicted near drowning of the day before that was making her feel off. Regardless, she needed to go home and lay down. So what should we get? Hinata asked. Actually Hina-chan, I want to go home and lay down for a bit, Becky said. You are a little red, Hinata put the back of her hand to her forehead. And you are warm. Could just be the hot spring, Ino suggested. Or it could be the fever coming back, Hinata countered. Maybe we should just call it a day. After all the time in the hot spring with the other girls, some alone time actually sounded pretty good to Becky. It would give her a chance to be alone with her thoughts and reflect on the conversations they had had without having to keep up with new ones. No, that's okay Hinata, Becky shook her head. You guys go out and get something to eat. I'll make some toast and tea and read a book or something. If you're sick I can't let you go home by yourself, Hinata protested. My god, Hinata, she's a grown-up. Sakura barked. She can walk home by herself. Hinata shrunk back a little. She looked at Becky and then back at the rest of the girls, torn. Becky could feel the inner conflict and looked around for an out for her friend. Neji. Becky called out, waving. Neji had been walking along further up the road. He turned at his name, and when he saw Becky waving he made his way over to the group. Something I can help you ladies with? He asked. Neji, could I bother you to walk me home? Becky walked over beside him so she was looking up at him from his side. It was a trick she used with her dad all the time. Looking up at a boy made them feel protective of you. He looked at the other girls, as if thinking, why me? The other girls wanted to go out to eat but I'm not feeling well and I don't want to spoil their fun. Becky looped her arm through his. There was no getting out of it now. He sighed. Yes, I can walk you home. You girls go on and have fun. Becky waved with her free arm. Neji started to turn them toward home but Becky held on to him. Just wave at them till they round the corner, Becky said under her breath. Neji followed suit, trying to hide his confusion. After the girls went out of sight he looked at Becky. What's going on here? Look, you don't have to walk me home. Becky released his arm. Hinata was worried about me and wanted to walk me, but if she did that I know she'd just stay in to take care of me for the night. That was very considerate of you. Neji looked at Becky with surprise. She puppy dog guards me all the time, Becky explained. I know she doesn't get to go out and spend enough time with her friends. Thanks for playing along. Neji considered Becky for another moment before he spoke. Something's troubling you. No, I'm not feeling well as all. Becky tucked her hair behind her ear. It was hard lying to someone who with a look could see inside your body for the telltale signs of dishonesty. Elevated heart rate, rapid breathing, activation of the adrenal system, she couldn't hide those things. She hoped he wouldn't trigger the Byakugan. What's making you feel ill? He pushed. I just had a bad day at training, Becky sighed. I overexerted myself and I'm just really exhausted now. Then I think I will walk you home. He put a hand on her shoulder and turned her toward home. No, really Neji, I'm okay, she began. Tsukimori, you aren't talking your way out of this, he interrupted. After a few blocks she sighed. Thanks, Neji. Of course, he smiled slightly.